He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Loren Norris.
In case you haven't noticed it, when you're a leader, there's like 1,001 ways. Remember that old movie? What is the name of the movie? It was like a series of silly things called 1,000 Ways to Die. And it was all these really bizarre ways that you could bring about your own demise. But yeah, leadership is like that. There's 1,001 ways to destroy your career, to end your leadership, to knock holes in your influence. Today, I want to talk about just one of those 1,000 ways, but that's what we're going to do here on Leading Leaders Podcast. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I'm J. Loren Norris with the Leading Leaders Podcast, and I can tell you for the pushing 30 years, 35 years that I've been in various roles of leadership, from a junior NCO to running my own company and running retail establishment and other businesses for other people. I think the largest group of employees I've been responsible for was around 20. The largest group of volunteers was around 100 and something. But I can tell you that all along the way, there's a whole lot of ways. Like 1,000 Ways to Die, there's like a whole lot of ways you can screw up your leadership opportunities. You can burn bridges in relationships. You can make mistakes that are financial in nature. You can make bad choices, make bad calls, make bad decisions. I mean, you think you got it figured out, and then all of a sudden you realize that what you thought you had figured out isn't that figured out. That it sounded good on paper. Or as they said in Oppenheimer, theory only takes you so far, and then you got to actually do something. Well, it's easy to sit around the boardroom and pull out the whiteboard and the markers and draw all these beautiful lines and charts and diagrams. And the Venn diagram, of course, everybody's got to have one of those. And once you draw all that stuff on the board, you look at it and you go, wow, how could it possibly fail? That's a great idea. Everything about it is awesome. But then you realize just a little bit down the path as you're actually moving from theory to doing that, you can't do it all yourself. And there's this really odd balance as a leader that's really especially pointed out when you're an entrepreneur or the beginning of a movement, or you're launching something that's never been done before, or at least from your perspective, it's never been done this way before because, it's your idea and that makes it unique and nobody's ever seen or heard it. And look, if you found yourself in that place as a leader where you're having to re-explain what your vision is to everyone that you're talking to, chances are you've got something that's a little bit out of whack. Maybe just one tweak away from practically doable. Now, I'm not saying that in every case, but I am saying there are a whole lot of entrepreneurs and leaders that I've run into that when I ask them, will this solution actually work for everybody? They think, well, it ought to, but I've never actually tested that. There is a reason that people do what they call market research. And that market research sometimes looks like asking your existing customers, did that make any sense to you? Did it actually help you? If I look back on all the people that I've helped, what was the way that I helped them the most? What was it they most went, wow, I couldn't have done that without you? That's probably a good thing to expand on, to stretch your services a little bit, maybe to make a little more available, accessible financially, or available in the ways and the magnitude to which you provide that service. But if nobody's asking for it, There's never been a survey. You haven't done a focus group. If none of that has happened, and yet you're still inventing and creating and making available and making possible, chances are you're, possibly wasting your time. A lot of time and a lot of resources. And you wouldn't be the first. There have been dozens, thousands probably of leaders around the world who have created a new whatever. And the marketing plan maybe made a big splash and got people to try it. And then they realized after they tried it, that thing doesn't work. Or that idea sucks. The consequences of doing it are worse. Have you ever read the fine print at the bottom of the television ad when they're promoting like a new pharmaceutical? And it says may cause, and then the list is longer. And at some point, and George Carlin pointed this out, at some point you've got to weigh the balance of, do I want to deal with the ailment that this medicine is going to solve, or do I want to deal with all the problems that it could potentially cause? Because one of those is not a really good thing. And that's a decision you have to make. Well, the challenge with leaders is often we get running down the road, we get in that lane and we think, I got this figured out. But then we also want to jockey for position. I think it's in the nature of every leader. We feel like, well, the reason I'm a leader, quote unquote, natural born leader, I have all the characteristics and the skill sets. I like to talk in front of people. That's what makes me a leader. Sometimes we kind of get that in our head. And because we get that in our head, we think, well, I'm the boisterous one. I'm the guy with all the ideas, or the girl with all the ideas. I came up with this notion. It should be mine to carry it across the finish line. For them, when the ball was snapped, they all began to fight over the ball to get to the goal line. If they all abandoned the role that they were assigned to, gave up on their lane, and just went about the business of trying to get the ball across the line themselves, fighting each other for the ball to try to get it to the end zone. I played American football from middle school all the way through. I played a little bit in the Air Force. And there are assignments for a reason. Sometimes those assignments are because that's a job that needs desperately to be done. And usually the coach is pretty good at looking at someone's size, shape, skills, abilities, agilities, disciplines, and saying, if you will do this one thing very, very well, and let the other 10 people do their thing very, very well, we have a winning combination. The challenge, and we've seen it in many NFL teams, you get some superstars, and all the superstars want to do is, well, superstar. They want to do what makes them look good, what pads their resume, what pads their pocket, what makes a lot of money, what makes a lot of splash, gets them TikTok followers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they're not necessarily sticking to their assignment. They have abandoned their role. They're not staying in their lane. They're jockeying for position of being the superstar. There was a debate even on the Cowboys team several years ago about two superstar wide receivers. Which one was going to continue to make the money and which one was continuing to drop the ball and still complaining that he wasn't getting enough play time. They weren't throwing the ball to him enough. Well, it was because when they did, he literally fumbled his own position. But it also had a lot to do with his attitude on and off the field. He wasn't a team player. He wasn't the guy who would do what needed to be done for somebody else to succeed. Now, if you find yourself as a leader in that place where you feel like when you walk into the place of business, let's use a fast food restaurant for an example. If you walk in the door and you feel like you have to be the person taking every drive-through order, you also have to be the person on the cash register, and the person who makes every milkshake, and the person who flips every burger, and the person who puts the sauce on every bun, and the person who makes every fry and apple pie and ice cream. If you feel like none of those things happen well without you, you might have a leadership problem. And really, you probably have more than one. The first one of which is you haven't figured out what your lane is. If you're the leader, your lane is, well, delegation. And that means that your job in that role is to train everyone else to be able to do their job very, very well. Your job is training. Your job is knowing all of those roles, but not having to do every one of them all the time, every day. If you find yourself still there, then you have failed at the role of leadership, i.e. training and qualifying people who are motivated to do the job that they're supposed to do. I'm going to tell you, there are times that You will find yourself in the place where you realize, I've got to train this person better because I could accidentally do the job better than they're doing it with all of their effort. Well, maybe you picked the wrong talent for that role. Maybe you're a micromanager and you need to get over it. Both of those things can be true at the same time. Sometimes they need a little help, a little assistance, a little direction, a little stand beside me and show me how to do it. Maybe just a little help because I'm overwhelmed. But those are perfectly reasonable. But if you find yourself with this inclination to run from one lane to the next, one job assignment to the next, one position to the next, to prove how good you are at all of them, there's something wrong in your own leadership character that you need to work on. How do I know? Because I are one. I've been the kind of leader who felt like, well, I can do it myself faster than I can train somebody else to do it. So why would I bother training somebody? I'll just get it done and not argue about it. And I still struggle, to be honest with you, in that same area. I have paid people thousands of dollars to build websites for me, only to end in absolute frustration because I feel like we're speaking two different languages. And I don't mean GUI versus English. I mean like Martian versus English. Like I say, I want a website that does A, B, and C, and I get the Skrillex dialect back of algebra. It doesn't look anything like what I asked for. It doesn't function either. One individual that I paid to work on my website spent 7 weeks and did nothing more than a caricature of my face for the header on the page. They spent so much time in Photoshop. Literally, another consultant that I was working with looked at it and said, you look like a character from the Game of Thrones, but it doesn't look like you at all. It's like they used your likeness for a mock. Where's the rest of the website? I'm like, that's the question I'm asking, because right now it can't capture information or anything. So I go back to building my own website, and I have built and rebuilt my own website at least a dozen times, even though I've spent thousands of dollars for other people to do it. Maybe that's a control freakish thing in me. There is an antidote to that, by the way. Did you know that? Yeah. When you're the leader who feels like everything works best when I do it myself, that's a problem. When you can't stay in your own lane because you feel like I've got to touch everything to make it a success, that's a problem. When you feel like I am the only one smart enough, talented enough, skilled enough to pull this off, that's a problem. It's a problem called pride. There's an antidote for pride. You want to know what it is? It's not easy. It's not simple. Sometimes it's painful. It's absolutely necessary in your character, and it has been my Achilles heel for a long time, but I'm still working on it. The antidote for pride is called humility. It's a mindset. It's the way you think. It's not necessarily thinking less of yourself, but it's thinking about yourself less. It's focusing on the needs and the wants and the desires of others and not focusing always on you and your outcome. It's not easy. I've been trying it for years, and I'm still learning, and I still got a lot left to learn. There are people who seem to have a personality trait that makes humility easy. I'm not one of them. But I can tell you, when you master humility, and you master that ability to allow someone to fail in their lane without you trying to rescue them because it makes you look bad, you're going to find a whole lot of exponential growth, a whole lot of synergy that's going to take off really, really fast. When you let people do what they're called to do, when you hired them, you looked at their resume and said, oh, this is the perfect person for this role. Let them do it. In fact, let them do it even till they fail. Either they will fail and learn to do it better, or they'll fail and learn, this is not my role, this is not where I belong, this is not the organization I'm supposed to be a part of. And they will self-exit. And there's nothing wrong with that. But those are the kinds of decisions that you have to make as a leader to be able to say, I don't have to do everybody's job for them. I can let people do their job to the point of failure or to the point of success. Now, see, the problem for most people as leaders who are failing to do that, the reason they're failing to do it is because they're still jockeying for position. They still want the rest of the world to look at them as a grand success. And heaven forbid the rest of the world look at them and see people on their team who are not the best of the best of the best of the best. Well, because their failure reflects on me as a leader. And there's some truth to that. But there's also some truth to that evolution that says, I'm going to allow them to fail until they decide how to get better or how to get gone. And you don't have to do their job for them. If the reason you're doing their job for them, and this comes down to motive, which comes down to pride, which comes down to a presence of humility or a lack thereof. If the reason you're doing their job for them is because it will make you and your company look bad if you don't, that could be a pride problem. If, on the other hand, you're doing their job for them because the customer deserves that service at the highest level, deserves that thing to be done, and because you also realize maybe a little training is needed here, I dropped the ball and didn't train them as well as I should have, well, that could be an indication of the humility to say, I didn't give you the best training that I could have. I didn't give you what you needed to do your job at the best level. So I'm going to do now what I should have done then, and I'm going to step in and help you get it done. I'm not doing it for you, I'm doing it with you. That's a different motive. That's a different position of humility. That's a different character motivation to get it done. If that's the way you're operating, well, that's good for a time being. That's good for a season to be able to say that I'm going to step in and help. I'm going to help cover some gaps. I'm going to make up the difference while I train another person, while I train you better, et cetera, et cetera. There's nothing wrong with that. And trust me, as an entrepreneur, there are going to be times like right now. I'm standing in the studio. Do you know who else is in the studio producing this show? Let me count them all. None. Yep. I pushed the buttons to switch the camera angles. I started the show. I'll end the show. I'll edit the show. I'll post the show. Everything that you see in Leading Leaders Podcast is done by a team of one. That took some learning. I had to learn to set the cameras and adjust the colors and move the lights and set the microphones and adjust the volumes. And all of those things have to be done. And there are people who've got the big budgets, like a Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire, where they've got not just the team that works in the studio while Ben is working on his script and his content, but they've got enough teams to send people out so you can do an interview with Jordan Peterson while he's in Toronto and somebody else is in LA. And they film them both live on location. I don't have teams to do that. No, when I film on location, I pack up my whole studio and I put it in the back of my little car and I drive it there. Yep, that's how I do it. Why? Because I don't have a team to do this yet. However, when I have a team to do this, maybe sometimes when I do interviews, my wife will sit in the production booth and do all the switching and make sure the headphones sound good and everybody's microphone works right. When I do that, I have done enough homework in every one of the lanes necessary to pull this off to be able to train the next person to do that job well. As an entrepreneur, that is part of your role. When you're launching, that's part of your role. If you're still doing it 20 years later, you're a control freak. That's a whole different problem. That's a different kind of a character thing that needs to be solved. But as soon as there's a budget to bring people in to do a team, you should be training them in the things that you've had to figure out along the way so that you don't have to do it all on yourself. Or you should be hiring people that are already masters at that thing. That's how your company grows. That's how your organization grows. That's how you move to the next level. But if we put all of that aside and we ask the question, why do you feel like you've got to step in everybody else's lane, do everybody else's job along the way? There might be one other motive that's really hard to accept as a leader. And that is because you know some of those positions on the team are not just necessary for the team to function, but they're the positions on the team that everybody looks at. There are some people who are phenomenally better at production than I am. But if you put them in front of a camera, they freeze up. They go silent. They can't think. There are people who take on a role like what I'm doing with this podcast, and they would love to do this every day, but the amount of time it takes to write the script makes it impossible for them. Little side note, I don't use a script. If I went to a wide angle, you would notice there are no notes. None in the studio. There's no script, there's no notes, there's no teleprompter. This is all right off the top of my head, squeezed out of my heart. When you squeeze a pineapple, you don't get ketchup, you get what's in there. For 35 years I've been studying leadership. That's what you're getting. You're getting what drips out of me in everyday conversation. Why? Because sometimes those conversations are hard to have and everybody wants to charge you for them. So Leading Leaders podcast is free for a reason. Leading Leaders was picked up by Traverse TV because it's free. It is broadcast in a lot of different places on a lot of different platforms for free. That's why I don't pay a team. I can do it myself so that it remains free for those who enjoy it and those who learn from it and those who are challenged by it. There are other things that I do that are not so free. They kind of pay the bills for the free part. But if you feel like being in front of the camera is going to make you the superstar, and then you find out I don't have the chops for that, I have to have my notes, somebody's got to run the teleprompter, somebody else has to run the cameras, and that gets very expensive. And it does. It would cost me $3,000 to $5,000 a show to put on this show if I were having to pay for the studio time and the content and the editing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because I can do it all myself, it doesn't cost me that. If you find yourself in that place where you're thinking, I need to get into the lane in front of the camera where the lights are shining on me because that will make me a celebrity, because that'll make me a superstar, because one day that'll make me rich. Stay in your lane. If that's your lane, do it well. If that's not your lane, understand what your lane is. Jockeying for position by sacrificing what your gifts and talents is. It's like second breakfasts. No, your gifts and talents should make a way for you everywhere you go. If you're operating outside of your gifts and talents, chances are you're jockeying for position, and that's a problem. That's a problem called pride. The antidote for pride, we discerned, was humility. It's a hard character trait to master, but it's absolutely necessary if you're in leadership. So I want to challenge you. If you feel like you're trying to do everybody's job and you're trying to figure out why it's not succeeding, maybe you need to step back for a minute and help train them a little bit better. Maybe you need to realize you're not operating in your lane to begin with. Stop jockeying for position. Stay in the lane you were created for. Do it really, really well. There's a lot of influence there. That makes you a better leader. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Loren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Loren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Loren will serve you well.